Namaste everyone, Yoga Chris here, and I wanted to talk about two realizations that have come to me fairly recently, within the last 3 to 4 months, but have been coming up more and more in my private clients or in my lessons in communication with private clients. This has to do with, in a handstand, the alignment of your scapula and the tilting of your pelvis. Basically, I break apart handstanding into 4 independent, and they're all dependent on each other, but they're 4 independent categories of skills and techniques that need to be advanced and progressed. These are wrist mobility and strength, shoulder mobility and strength, pelvis mobility and strength, although most people are actually strong enough there, and then the actual inversion techniques and a progression of techniques that take you from, very, very simple balancing poses to one-handed handstands and things like that. So those are the 4 areas: wrists, shoulders, hips, and then the balancing techniques. Fundamental to all of those are wrists, but the interesting thing is how the hips relate to the shoulders, and they're often a reflection of each other. And I say this a lot in my yoga classes in regards to the spine. The cervical spine, the neck, is reflecting the sacrum, meaning when the cervical spine goes forward of the thoracic, the sacrum tends to go back of the lumbar. So they reflect in that way. And there's more complications to that, especially since your sacrum is fused, but your neck is not. So you might have a lateral bend in the neck, but not so much in the sacrum, so it might fall apart. But it's useful as a learning tool and as an analogy. So this happens in handstanding, and this is different than just arm balancing. There's a lot of arm balances that aren't handstands. You'll never get the line like you would in a handstand, and the supporting forearm balances or variations of that, or peacock pose where your arms are in your belly, those have different sets of rules than a handstand. But a handstand, you're looking for that line, and so to do that, you need something called a posterior tilt in the scapula. So where the top of the scapula goes back and the front of the bottom of the scapula goes forward. And it's the same for the pelvis. You need a posterior tilt in the pelvis, which is top of the pelvis moves back, bottom of the pelvis moves forward. Generally a difficult thing to do for people. However, a lot of fit individuals, or people that do yoga or have been trying to do something like a handstand for a while, they can achieve at least one of these. The pelvis can go posterior or the scapula can go posterior. And they might even be able to do both, but individually, not at the same time. The fascia, the muscle connections between the scapula and the pelvis are such that when one goes back, the other wants to go forward. And when the other goes back, the other goes forward. So to do both posterior tilting requires a lot of effort. The effort of a handstand is actually mostly in keeping the pelvis and the scapula both posteriorly tilted. If you can do that, the handstand is, relative to the effort of doing that, is easy. It's more muscular and mental effort to keep the posterior tilt in the pelvis and scapula than it is the effort to actually hold a balance. Okay, so what this means is if you're having difficulty in one, you can address it indirectly by working on the other. Now, there are many progressions for this sort of thing. I haven't researched YouTube yet on the progressions available. The progressions that I know come from the Fly Strong package from Dylan Werner. They come from the Handstand series from Coach Summers on, I forget what that program is called. They also come a lot from Yoga Therapy, which I learned originally from Bryce Delbridge. This is a lot of isolated muscle activations, which when you can find subscapularis, you can easily posteriorly tilt your scapula. When you can isolate serratus anterior, you can engage and get closer to a posterior tilt of the pelvis. Lower rectus abdominis, the glutes, the deep external hip rotators. And this will lead to the second point, but a lot of that isolated muscle activity, which I have that playlist on this channel, so go check that out. Although it only has 7 or 8 activations, there's 20. Some of them are very difficult to capture on film, but that product will come out after pranayama comes out, will be the full isolated muscle activation sequence. So that actually contributed a lot to my handstand practice, but also working Ashtanga Vinyasa. Just the Ashtanga Vinyasa system has a lot of progressions that will help you open your shoulders. Okay, so that's the first thing. Heart opening, you need that posterior tilt in your scapula. Even more than you think. Second thing, This is actually the super key. So if you've listened this far in the video, congratulations, because you're about to get a super key. Go ahead and Google an image for, here are the 4 words, back line anatomy train. Anatomy train is a concept developed by, I think, Thomas Myers. Basically how the fascia of some muscles connect to the fascia of the others in this linear fashion. They become a train track of fascia. The back line describes what goes from the Achilles all the way up the sit bones, up the spine, over the head to the corners of the eyebrows. 2 lines, not officially parallel, but you could think of them as parallel lines from the eyebrows all the way down to your ankle bones. That's phenomenal. What this is important about in handstanding is to achieve that posterior pelvic tilt is very helpful for maintaining balance. Also, keeping the legs very engaged, because engagement contributes to stability. And stability, you can't be stable unless it's engaged. Because of the nature of the human body, there's so many joints. If there's no engagement, there's no stability. So engagement equals stability. Stability makes balancing easier. So engagement makes balancing easier. So if you can engage your legs, balancing is easier. All the way from the pelvis to the toes. So here's where the anatomy train comes in, the back line. If you can point your big toe, because the fascia of the Achilles goes down into the plantar fascia of the foot. So pointing the foot does good, but pointing the toes also, all the way to the toe tips. And there's a connection with the straight leg. If you can point your toes, there's a connection from the toe point all the way up to your sit bones, which is your ischial tuberosities. The 2 bones that are under your butt cheeks, that they're bony, they sit down. There's 3 bones that form the platform of your seat, your coccyx, and the 2 ischial tuberosities. And so forget the coccyx right now. The ischial tuberosities are pulled down and forward by the hamstrings, given everything else is relaxed. So pointing the feet through the toes, feel and search for, and you don't have to be in a handstand for this. I do this in cobra pose. You're laying on your belly and you're pointing your feet. You can find that connection. I do it just in my therapy practice. You lay on your back and you point your feet, you can find this connection. You're looking for a connection from the tips of the toes all the way to the sit bones. So up the Achilles tendon, the gastrocnemius, the calf muscles, up the back of the knee, up the hamstrings, all the way to the sit bones. And play with it. Just doing it and be like, I don't feel it. No, 10 minutes, 20, 30-second goes of pointing and really trying to find that. And of course I teach lots of progressions from all the way from just wall sits, laying on your back, through weight-bearing ways to find that posterior pelvic tilt. And once you find it in these weight-bearing poses, it's very, very easy just to practice handstands walking around. A handstand is just an inverted foot stand. All right, so I'm standing on my feet right now. I'm doing a handstand just upside down. And so all of those principles of posterior tilt to these anatomy points, the connection from my heels to my sit bones, and there's a lot of other things like a posterior glide in your head so that your head doesn't come forward like that. You want to glide it backwards. That will also help posterior tilt to the scapula. So there's so many techniques and intelligent progression. So if you're interested in handstands, I definitely recommend contact me. My email is in the description for this channel, and we can set up some private sessions. Also, if you found this helpful, definitely comment below, or if you have any questions about what I've talked about. I threw a lot of anatomy at you, and my lessons tend to be very anatomically oriented with images and pictures, but we can simplify it down to, layman's terms. And also, August 15th, Ashtanga Primary Series Pranayama comes out on ninthlimb.com. I'm very excited about this. This is my personal practice daily, and I absolutely love this sequence. You'll love it too. It'll bring a profound level of attention span, of focus, of a sense of vitality, and you will definitely experience phenomenal sensations and realizations just in your own unique circumstance. I can't tell you what you're going to realize. It has to do with bringing together the connections, or connecting all of the kind of fragmented memories and thoughts that you do have in your mind. I guarantee it. I guarantee. And so this is a phenomenal product for you. You go to ninthlimb.com on August 15th. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.